Regrets. Everyone has them. That one time you didn't ask out your high school crush? Missing a last-minute chance in an important sports game. But few regrets are as public or as notable as these creators' regretful creations. It wouldn't be a shock to anyone to say Martin Scorsese is one of the greatest filmmakers in all of cinema.
And the Oscar goes to Martin Scorsese.
A pioneer of the new Hollywood wave and a creative powerhouse who still continues to innovate and release consistent masterpieces even into his later life. In 2007, Martin Scorsese would walk on stage at the prestigious Academy Awards in the Kodak Theatre, Hollywood, and collect his one and only Oscar to date.
Thank you.
And whilst the film to put him on this pedestal, The Departed, is adored by fans, many believe this Oscar was not only for this project, but also the culmination of decades worth of work prior. But, believe it or not, at one point, Martin Scorsese didn't think he'd get here.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Gangs of New York was released in 2002 and was very much a passion project for Martin Scorsese.
It was a project that he'd been wanting to do for over 20 years and it never happened. All the pieces didn't come together in the puzzle, and finally we got it financed and he was ready to go.
The film would end up leaving a sour taste in his mouth, with issues regarding runtime and budget with one particular Miramax producer. I realised I couldn't work if I had to make films like that ever again. But it was only 2 years later where Scorsese found himself once again working with Miramax's Harvey Weinstein. The shoot went well, the editing went well. For this project, all seemed to be going perfectly. Until the last couple of weeks where Warner Bros. And Miramax would cut off funding. And now we're back on stage. But nevertheless, The Departed was yet again another studio film that tried to get in the way of the pioneer's vision. But, with the Academy Award firmly in hand, he was encouraged to make 2010's Shutter Island, the film that he would eventually coin the last studio film he ever made. And in an interview with GQ, Scorsese stated, "I should have probably gone on to do Silence." To this day, no one hates this more than me. This was of course David Fincher, sat down in 2009 talking about the third film in the franchise, Alien 3.
It's amazing to me that Fox is the #1 studio in the country because they're all such a bunch of morons.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and at the time when Fincher had accepted the project, he had never shot a film before, for this project being his directorial debut. That doesn't mean he lacked experience. In fact, he had actually worked on a small indie sci-fi film in 1983 known as Return of the Jedi, as well as various other movie and television commercials.
Would you give a cigarette to your unborn child?
Not to mention music videos for artists like global megastars Madonna. And whilst I'm sure shirtless men weren't Fincher's ideal shooting candidates, even in some of these videos, you can see the start of Fincher's iconic, darker toned style seeping through. However, when the project of Alien 3 landed on his lap, even though he didn't like the script, even then it wasn't as illustrious as it first may have seemed. You see, Fincher wasn't the first person to get this job. In 1990, when he was signed on, the now award-winning director would have to replace the New Zealand director and screenwriter Vincent Ward. But replacing directors isn't the end of the world. Many iconic films have jumped from director to the next and still been successful. The main issue was the film's unfinished screenplay and the numerous writers and drafts it had to undergo. So much so, the script was even being changed whilst shooting. Not to mention the various tampering from the studio due to lack of trust in the first-time movie director. And even though Fincher doesn't regard Alien 3 as his own film, the project almost certainly helped lay out his path as one of Hollywood's best filmmakers working today.
Kind of retreated back to doing television commercials and had no expectation that I would ever be employable again. And I got I got sent a script, and it was 7.
For the cinephiles out there, it should be no shock to any of you that this famous example has made this list. In the winter of 1984, Frank Herbert's brilliant sci-fi epic Dune would be first adapted onto the big screen. Helmed by, at the time, a promising director coming off of the back of films Eraserhead and Elephant Man, Dune ultimately failed both critically and financially.
Do you regret making it?
Yes, except it just nailed this idea, never, ever do a film without Final Cut.
After coming off the back of the prior mentioned films, it's fair to say David Lynch had his options open. At one point, Lynch was offered the chance to direct the box office mega hit, Return of the Jedi, but ultimately refused as he felt George Lucas had already designed 3/4 of the project. Regardless of directors who had tried to combat this monster before, Lynch saw potential in Dune, but when getting onto the script stage, even then the iconic director believed he sold out, knowing he wouldn't have the final cut of the feature.
So it was a slow dying the death and a terrible, terrible experience.
Nowadays, on some copies of Dune, you can still see the famous pseudonym Alan Smith, an imaginary person created by the Directors Guild of America to protect notable directors' reputations whose features didn't have full creative control. Dune would get its chance on the big screen once more. In 2021, Denis Villeneuve released his take on the classic sci-fi work, and with a sequel on its way, Dune is even more popular than ever. As for Lynch, he has only gone bigger and higher as both a director and actor. And whilst all these projects may not be their directors' favourite bodies of work, it has only helped the filmmakers to the higher heights of Hollywood. And if you take away one thing from this video, always support directors' visions. Thanks for watching.